Ned Fulmer was the wife guy of the Try Guys of BuzzFeed fame until he blindsided everybody, including his wife Ariel, when he was caught having an affair with a subordinate in 2022. I know, face palms everywhere. Why'd you do that, Ned? But from that day on, the lives of everyone that were closely involved, they were just turned upside down. And Ned and Ariel essentially had to go into hiding to escape the storm of media coverage, social media fury. Everyone was invested in this. It was big news for a while. We had so much information and then just nothing all of a sudden. The updates that came in over the years were sparse and they were vague. We'd have a picture here, a sighting there, that was it. But now, Ned Fulmer is back, and so is Ariel Fulmer, and they've exposed the answers to every single question that we were left being plagued with after Ned's cheating scandal came to light. You know, we wondered how they coped privately with the scandal, whether they remained a couple or not, and what they were doing for work and so on and so forth, and we can talk about all of that now. But first, a couple quick disclaimers, frequently asked questions. I don't really like to cover anything topical or relevant anymore on this channel, but I've made an exception for this. I've been really loving the niche sort of internet history-esque videos that I've been doing. I don't feel like I'm rubbing salt in a wound making those or encouraging negativity. I feel like it's just a good time all around. But the reason I want to make this video is because without it, my first video about the Ned Fulmer wife guy situation feels incomplete. And also, of course, my most popular video. I'm not particularly proud of it. I feel like I hadn't really mastered the art of researching or scripting at that point, which is understandable because it was pretty much, it was one of the first deep dives I've ever done. But I'd love to sort of reapproach this with the quality that I've gained making these types of videos for the past couple of months. And then the frequently asked questions. I'm from New Zealand. I have a Kiwi accent. And well, that's pretty much it actually. The last thing I have to say is this is officially the last video that I'll be filming in this house. Everyone say goodbye to the chaotic bedroom background. Bye. But anyway, with that said, it's time that we dig into the topic of Ned and Ariel Fulmer once again. So we are, of course, going to talk about their recent podcast in which they revealed the answers to many of the questions that the internet has been hoping for them to answer for years now. But first, I'm going to set the scene for you a little bit. You probably already know what happened, so if you're caught up on the details, you don't want to hear it, completely fine. You can skip to, I'll put the time card on the screen, you can skip to there. But if you'd like a quick rundown to refresh your memory or introduce you to the situation, then follow me. We're going down memory lane. Come on now. Hope you brought your snacks. Now, Ned Fulmer of BuzzFeed fame met his wife, well, to-be wife, Ariel, at a mutual friend's birthday party in Chicago. This was way back in December of 2009. So at this point, they were both in their early 20s. They were just out living their lives. And from the way Ned described the whole scene at the party, it was like love at first sight with Ariel. Ned was just absolutely smitten. He was captivated from first glance. The feeling, it didn't read to me as mutual exactly, but they got there eventually. Basically, Ariel is quoted as saying, "I'm pretty sure Ned was talking to my friend Annalise the whole time." But Ned always tells me the super romantic version of love at first sight and never seeing anybody else. She said, "I remember Ned walking into that party with half a bottle of tequila and being like, 'Happy birthday, I brought you half a bottle of tequila.'" And I was like, who is this guy? Don't bring half a bottle of tequila to a birthday party. So a charming first introduction to Ned, right? Great first impression, but either way, somehow, some way or another, just over the course of that fateful birthday party, Ned Fulmer won Ariel over. So the both of them, they left the party that night with nothing but excitement to see each other again. And so, of course, they started dating not too long after. They liked each other. Quite cute. And then things started going. So within 6 months, by I think it was April 2010, the pair had moved in together. Then the next year, in 2011, Ned had proposed to Ariel. And a Reddit user, they shared that Ariel talked about this in an episode of the You Can Sit With Us podcast. She shared that it was most likely because he had a near-death experience that made him feel mortal and take the jump straight to marriage out of fear of not having another chance. So not the most romantic reason to propose, but I guess if he was ready for the rest of his life and so was she, then good for them. And then just like that, in 2012, Ned and Ariel were married. So people have mentioned that the couple they did move reasonably fast in their relationship, but I don't think the timeline was anything crazy. You know what I mean? I guess They say when you know, and Ned and Ariel just knew, is what it sounds like. So after being married, I suppose happily married for a couple of years, they went on to expand their family in 2018. At that point, they were expecting their first son, and Ned announced that on Instagram. He posted this photo, I guess, and he shared this caption. It said, "Ariel is pregnant. I am so happy to be a dad soon. Words can't describe what I'm feeling right now. We wanted to have a little baby Fulmer for a long time. Seeing and hearing the tiny little heartbeat made me feel this overwhelming sense of awe. It's beautiful. It's terrifying. It's all happening." So obviously on the surface, it seemed like Ned and Ariel were, they were working like a well-oiled machine. They were on the same page and they were loving life together. Honestly, Ned and Ariel's relationship seemed picture perfect, near on. Like, from what they were displaying to the world, it wasn't unreasonable to believe that they were very happy life partners and business partners, because they were involved in that together as well. They just seemed to do pretty much everything together in harmony. Like, it just worked so well. It was to the point where, like, they were so trustworthy. They were both trustworthy people. Their relationship seemed, just great. And so people would turn to them for relationship advice. There's even, there's photos and videos floating around of them doing this, like, presentation at a university or a couple universities on relationship ethics, because clearly Ned was an expert on the subject. I hope nobody took notes at that presentation. But anyway, my point is that there was like a brand basically that was being built around Ned being a real family guy, or specifically a wife guy. He was called a wife guy. He was just saying, my wife, every chance he got.
My wife. Do you ever think I talk about my wife too much?
Yeah. Keith is telling the truth.
And listen, Ariel was welcomed with open arms. Ned's fans, and fans of the Try Guys in general, they just adored Ariel. It was hard not to. Like, she was cute. She was funny, she was level-headed, and importantly, she was real. She was just so real and personable. And so because Ariel was so endearing and she just fit in so well, she became more and more incorporated into the Try Guys' business ventures and videos and just their sort of general image, I guess. Viewers became as attached to Ariel as Ned did all those years ago. They tuned in to watch her cook. They wanted to see her feature in challenges. They wanted to hear what was happening in her life, what she thought, what her opinions were. So they tuned into the You Can Sit With Us podcast. People just loved Ariel, which, to be honest, okay, on the subject of the podcast, it kind of like the more we heard Ariel speak about Ned and her relationship with him on the podcast, and the more Ned did the same in his own podcasty spaces, the more evident it became that the flags were not all green. Like, for example, there was this one time that Ned complained that Ariel would like ravage the fridge and dispose of his leftovers. The horror, right? Because I guess he'd prefer to get food poisoning from rotten food than endure the pain of opening the fridge and realizing his stinky leftovers were gone. Just shattered his heart, I suppose.
She likes collating things. She likes to streamline things in the refrigerator. So I'm constantly, like, just besieged by things randomly being moved to other places that are quote-unquote more organized. Yeah. And leftovers that have gotten, in her eyes, too old, thrown out.
Oh, that's the worst thing you can do to Ned, is get rid of leftover meat.
You threw out my thing?
In the same way, I'm like, Becky organized everything, and it makes sense where it is. I never would have done all those things, so Becky, I know you're watching and listening. I greatly appreciate it.
Our partners are right.
Yes. Yeah.
There's
and we
no
don't
world
like
that
it.
we are right in this clean situation.
We don't like it.
Again,
mine
perfectly good leftover.
I swear he talked the entire time about how clean his house is because of Becky.
He knows what's good for him.
I seriously, I was listening to the entire episode waiting for my damn turn. I was like, when is Ned going to say how great I am at cleaning and how thankful he is that I do all the work around the house?
Instead, he said you throw out his leftovers.
Exactly. Exactly. Because I clean out the refrigerator and I throw out the nasty leftovers.
That's so nice
and
of you.
he's mad
It is so
because
nice of
he
you.
thinks that like I threw away his meat because I don't like meat. What is that? What is that?
Real slowly just
I love my husband so much, but I was so disappointed. Like, I wasn't even mad. I was just like, well, why does he not think that I clean?
just leave his,
leave
his laundry.
All the damn time. Leave his laundry out. Don't do it.
A whole laundry episode. We all know you. The audience knows you. We know.
I am doing the laundry of 4 humans.
Bless
And
your heart. Bless your heart. I do not. I do the girls' laundry, and our nanny helps with that.
Yeah.
And I do my laundry, and Watts is on his fucking own.
stop it.
I grew up in a household where my parents did their laundry separately. My dad would get very upset if anyone ever touched his laundry. I used to do mine and Watts' laundry.
I'm very interested. How did this conversation go with Watts?
Oh,
where,
I just
where
cut
you
him
asked
off.
him to do his own
I
laundry.
don't even think I asked him. I just think I stopped.
You just didn't put it in the laundry.
I just didn't put it in the laundry. One day he was like,
it's a mountain.
yeah, one day he was like, wow, I have a lot of laundry. I was like, yeah, you should wash that. That's amazing.
And then when I was researching for my first video, I remember finding something about Ariel sort of complaining that Ned would lump her with the caregiving duties for their children a lot, even though they were both working. And I can't remember where I found this exactly, but I did find a Reddit user that explained the situation a little deeper, so I'll quote them. They said, Ariel spoke about a time where her and Ned were working in the office together. She left at 4:30 to take care of the kids, I'm assuming to relieve a sitter or a nanny, and Ned had to stay for an hour and a half after she left. She seemed kind of odd about it, kind of stammering around, explaining why she left and he stayed. It just seems, again, like the cliche that she was stuck taking care of the kids and Ned was working or doing whatever he wanted. And that is the same way I remember it. I just can't remember where I heard it or how I heard it. It'll probably be in my first video. I don't know why I didn't. Well, it feels weird to like research by looking into videos that I've already made. But anyway, I feel like, listen, I can like poke fun all I want, or like judge Ned's behavior all I want, but the reality is that no relationship is perfect, is it? You could find something to pick apart in my relationships with everyone, actually. My mother, my friends, my partner. I do things wrong, other people do things wrong, such as life. The thing is, right, that even good people have flaws, or they can have like opinions or ways of life that conflict with other people's. That doesn't necessarily make anyone the villain, does it? In the end, enduring relationships do just require a level of like compromise, communication, and those things can always be improved on, to be fair, as long as both parties are willing to participate in that improvement, they're both motivated to make those positive changes, then it's really a non-issue in the grand scheme of things. So either way, right, in spite of his few downfalls, many of us knew Ned Fulmer as the wife guy of the Try Guys. And that was a title that he wore with pride. It was his whole identity, his whole brand. Like, he could have gotten a little badge that said, instead of like birthday boy, it said, I love my wife. It would have been perfect. Because Ned loved to talk about his wife. He loved to love his wife. He was always on about his wife.
Now to think about my wife.
My wife. My wife. My wife.
My wife.
My wife.
My wife.
My wife.
My wife.
Hello, Ned's wife. I love you.
He brought his wife up every chance he got. Ariel, not so much. He didn't talk about her so much. Ariel didn't hear the name often, but his wife, oh my god, he was all about her. And clearly, we had not been burned yet. We were too young, too naive to know that Ned's constant hammering on about his wife and his family and how much he loved them was nothing more than a ruse. Even Ariel, I don't think, like the closest person to him in his life, I don't think she ever would have expected Ned to take their decade-long relationship and the family they'd built together, scrunch it up like a piece of paper covered in mistakes, and throw it into the fire. But that is exactly what Ned Fulmer did. So I'm going to touch on this briefly, but essentially, in September of 2022, Ned and Ariel's lives were turned on their heads when a months-long affair that Ned had been having with one of his employees was uncovered. And it sounds like to me what happened is that Ariel was informed about the affair by a fan. They sent her a compromising picture of Ned with his subordinate in New York, and Ariel couldn't really process it. So she said she thought it must have been Ned's sister or something. She texted him. She was like, why is your sister in New York, right? But then she had actually been planning to fly out to New York City with their sons to visit Ned, and then he picked them up from the airport, and on the car ride back she asked again, why is your sister in New York? And that's when his face changed and she realized, oh my god. So they're sitting in this car driving away from the airport and Ned just confesses everything, and Ariel was like, turn the car around, I want to go home. And it's all very upsetting. I can barely even, it hurts to hear about it. I can't even imagine what she was going through internally. But then shortly after that, there was just so much proof of this affair coming to light. Well, I guess in the grand scheme of things, is it that much? No, but it was pretty damning. Like, photos surfaced of Ned on like cozy little lunch dates with the subordinate. They were like playing tonsil hockey at a nightclub in some photos. They attended a Harry Styles house concert together. And all of this while I'm just picturing his wife Ariel like working on their shared business ventures or taking care of their children while he's out having the time of his life with this employee of his. Oh, it's a bit sickening, isn't it? And listen, ideally, this would have been their personal business that they could sort out behind closed doors without a bunch of eyes peering in, a bunch of noses sniffing into their private details. But unfortunately, that's not how it happened. Word spread quickly around the internet of Ned's affair, and honestly, as much as he broke the trust of Ariel, he also broke the trust of the fans. There was this parasocial betrayal that a lot of people felt because they were like, but you're the wife guy. And I think partially why it was such a big deal was that because Ned had completely misaligned himself with his personal brand. He was the wife guy, right? So when he broke that, he was no longer the wife guy. It led to him being deemed as like piece of trash was his stand-in, his filler nickname. And not only that, obviously that was quite the issue for Ned Fulmer, but he'd also deferred from the values of the Try Guys, in which he was a senior employee, he was like a co-owner of the Try Guys. And he did that by not only, cheating on his wife, that's not good, but also he violated his power as an employer by entering into a relationship with a subordinate, and the fact is that you've just got to treat that like it's sketchy. Do you know what I mean? Because that power imbalance could spell trouble. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, was something being held over this employee's head? It's never come out that was the case. From all accounts, it was a consensual workplace relationship, but the thing is, when you have that power imbalance, it's never quite level. And so unsurprisingly, you won't be shocked, shit sort of hit the fan after news of Ned's affair started getting around, and so he was quickly and unceremoniously fired from the Try Guys. He just disappeared one day, and my god, they were so disappointed in him. They were so upset. Valid emotions. But from there, Ned faced the music. He'd made really poor decisions, and this was his consequence. So he was sort of plunged into a hole of financial instability. What was he going to do for work? But then also relationship uncertainty. Had he ruined his family? I mean, the cheating, I'm sure, the affair was great, but the consequences of being discovered, not so good. Oh, they just must have sucked. And so Ned was obviously interested in making reparations. I am sure he would have loved to return to the peachy keen life that he was leading before all of this came out, where he was like, wait, but what about everything that I want to do? I can't do it anymore because I made a bad choice? But anyway, sorry, I'll stop. I shouldn't be teasing him, should I? Ned addressed the situation, right? He shared the following statement on Instagram, pretty sure. He said, family should have always been... No, Siri, why is Siri... No, girl, I didn't ask. Oh, she never turns on when I say, hey, Siri. It's always when I'm just talking about some random bullshit. She's like, I'm listening. Anyway, Ned Fulmer said, family should have always been my priority, but I lost focus and had a consensual workplace relationship. I'm sorry for any pain that my actions may have caused to the guys and the fans, but most of all, to Ariel. The only thing that matters right now is my marriage and my children, and that's where I'm going to focus all my attention. Which, good for you, but like, I'm sorry for any pain that my actions may have caused. You might have caused some pain. Not sure. It's not like you did anything that bad. Anyway, not me saying I said I'm not going to tease him anymore. I'm not going to tease him anymore. I'm going to reel it in. Sorry. So what did I actually want to say about this? Oh, I was going to say, like, as much as the relationship may have been consensual, right? Consensual workplace relationship, I get it. There's no argument against the fact that on many levels, what Ned did was wrong. He made a stupid decision, and he chose to make that decision over and over and over again, and it was wrong in a variety of ways. But unfortunately for Ariel, Ned's shameful behavior, like we sort of spoke about just before, it did become very, very big, very, very public news. So Ariel had to release her own statement. I think, well, I wouldn't say she had to, like she was forced, but it was kind of imperative that she did say something at that point. And what she said was, thanks to everyone who has reached out to me. It means a lot. Nothing is more important to me and Ned than our family. And all we request right now, wow, I really struggle with my R's sometimes. All we request right now is that you respect our privacy for the sake of our kids. Which is not an unreasonable request, is it? But apparently it was. We really struggled with that. It can be quite difficult to sort of hide from the watchful eyes of the internet as a public figure. But Ned and Ariel, from that point, all things considered, they did sort of fade away, but they couldn't escape completely, you know what I mean? Just naturally, with Ned and Ariel sort of choosing to keep their business to themselves, which is perfectly valid and respectable, theories began flying, like we'd been left on a cliffhanger, right? So everyone was like, well, what's happening? We can only guess. And then it was, oh, maybe this happened, maybe that happened. But all we were left with was radio silence. We never got a confirmation. What we did get right off the bat were these paparazzi photos of Ned and Ariel just walking in a neighborhood, presumably their neighborhood, which is creepy. This was maybe a day or two after news of the affair broke, I think, if I'm getting my timeline right. And I don't know, apparently they had wedding rings still adorning their ring fingers, so it was like important. I don't know, these photos made the news.
Hi guys. Hey, are you guys working things out?
Yeah,
You are?
working things out.
Well, that's good to hear. Hi Ariel. Hi Ned. Hey, what's next in your career, Ned? Okay. Okay, sure thing. Have a good day.
I spoke about this in the last video I made on this, but the paparazzi icks me out, man. Like the Page 6 article featuring these pictures, well, it was one of the articles that featured these pictures, but it contains the sentence, Ariel spoke out, asking for privacy for their family, which is so ironic because they wrote that in an article that shared pictures that they didn't consent to having taken. Like, I'm not seeing the privacy here, team. I'm glad you acknowledged what she wanted, but you didn't follow the rule book, did you? I know it's like, I know it's complex. We'll move past it. The reason I bring that up is to say that even though those photos were out there, the truth is that only Ned and Ariel truly knew how they were going to move forward as partners and as parents. But that's not really what the internet considered. The internet thought, oh, they've still got their wedding rings on, and they just, as far as onlookers could gather, right, Ned was probably graced with a second chance by Ariel. That's what they thought, or like, I guess that was the narrative that was being spun in the media, if you know what I mean. So people sort of clung to it, but it wasn't the only option, really, was it? Like, could Ariel maybe just be taking some time to think things through before pulling the plug on their decade-long relationship that involved 2 children? Perhaps. Or maybe could they be undergoing couples counseling and trying to put on like a civil front for the benefit of their 2 children? I don't know. Like, I think that a really complicated situation was boiled down to just a couple of theories, which I understand why. It's just maybe not, it wasn't the most productive dialogue, I guess. Because the fact is, 100% point blank, we knew nothing. We didn't know anything about what they were doing, what was happening between them, but over the coming years, there were attempts made to know more. Firstly, in June of 2023, someone shared these images on Twitter. It had the caption, I see Ned Fulmer has emerged from hiding above it, which is crack up. It's a funny way to put it. And then Reddit sleuths, they took a page out of Gollum's book. They began hunting for Ned's ring, which they believed that they did find on his ring finger. They zoomed in a picture and they were like, there it is. So they were pretty satisfied that Ned and Ariel were still together at this point. But of course, still, nothing was confirmed, and so we continued the search. Not long after that, actually, Ned and Ariel, they were photographed, they were just walking down the street with this cutesy little dog, and this picture was posted. It was a picture that was taken from behind, from like inside a shop or something. It was uploaded in July of 2023 on Twitter, and the caption said, Ned Fulmer and Ariel Fulmer confirmed, still together. But were they? Like, confirmed because they're walking down the street together? They have children together. Like, you're gonna see them together sometimes. But then again, the plot thickened. Ned and Ariel were seen again, apparently having a great time together at the Eras Tour in August of 2023. So this is June, July, August, and they're just being spotted everywhere. And then following that, all those sightings, apparently, I couldn't find this, apparently Ariel was listed as a director under Ned's new company, Fulmer Media Inc. And that was on LinkedIn. Some people spotted that, I couldn't confirm it. But anyway, all the signs were kind of pointing to yes, as far as the public was concerned. It was appearing like Ned and Ariel Fulmer really were still a couple. But then, 2024, some different news broke. A Reddit thread entitled Ned Fulmer trying to rebrand was posted. I love how people talk about him. Like, Ned Fulmer spotted in the wild. But anyway, that thread was posted 2024, and they shared this screenshot of Ned Fulmer's Instagram page. They noted that he'd changed his profile picture, and also he'd deleted the image of the public statement that he'd made about his affair back in 2022, which I think Ariel has also done. I think she's also actually, her whole Instagram is private now, so I'm not sure. But to be fair, I don't know if it's worth reading into that too much. Like, it's in the past. It's so far in the past. By 2024, I mean, it's been like at least a year and a half. I don't know. At that point, when your affair statement is nothing more than like a bad, irrelevant memory, why would you want to keep it up? So I understand both of them taking that down. But Ned had also changed his bio, which is kind of the whole main point of this, because his bio now included the sentence. It said like New York Times bestseller, formerly at the Try Guys. or at Try Guys, which was like, oh, because like, I hate to break it to you, but I think you've kind of burnt that bridge, buddy. Like, might be better to leave that one off the resume. At least don't tag them. Oh my god, he literally tagged them. Oh, it's a bit cringy, isn't it? It's like, publicly announcing that is like casually saying, you may remember me from that time I made the worst decision of my life for months straight. It's so awkward. Like, why do you want people to remember that? But it was kind of just based off of that. It was kind of smelling like possibly Ned was going to make an attempt to become a public-facing figure again. And people were raising the question, is it possible that Ariel is going to be along for that ride? Like, are we finally going to know what's happening with them? But then just as quickly as those rumors sort of sprung to life again, they were quelled. Because first, news spread that Ned was apparently spotted at Disneyland with his children. He was there without his wedding ring on, without Ariel present, so that sort of set alarm bells off for some people. And then just 8 months ago, at the start of this year, a Reddit thread entitled, "Ned is confirmed to be separated," was posted. And essentially how the story goes is there were a few people that sort of ran into Ned in bars over the New Year period, and they just got to talking about relationships. That's just where the conversation went. And so there was a TikTok user, they revealed that Ned told them that he had been separated from his wife for about a year, which turned out to be incorrect, so I'm not sure. They'd been separated for more like 3 years at that point, but regardless, that's what we knew at the time. And it was pretty trustworthy information because they literally posted a TikTok and it was like a photo of them with Ned Fulmer, so it was like, okay, I'm starting to think they might know something. But then under that thread, there was a Reddit user that shared a photo of her with Ned Fulmer as well, and she said, "We hung out in downtown St. Augustine and went to a few different bars," and she followed that up with the statement that he explained to me that they, obviously him and Ariel, have no animosity towards each other, and he was asking me for co-parenting tips since I am a single mum. But that's just what he told me. So there were some pieces coming together. Another Reddit user pointed out that he wasn't wearing a ring. It was starting to look not so good for Ned and Ariel's relationship, right? And then from there, we finally heard from Ariel. She kind of got her own thing going on, which was cool. She went ahead and started up a new business. It was called Ariel Fulmer Ceramics. And she opened an Instagram account for the business. The first post was this image alongside the caption, "Watch this space." And not only was that the first post on that Instagram account, it was also the only post. So keep watching the space, I guess. But the products look great to me, regardless of the lack of Instagram updates. The business is up and running. Feel free to check it out if you'd like. But anyway, this whole thing got people talking again. Because basically it was like people were getting whiplash. They were like, wow, I thought they were separated. But people were trying to wrap their heads around Ariel's choice then to continue going by the last name of Fulmer, because she had in the past added her maiden name to her LinkedIn profile, which it sort of like kind of signified the intention to incorporate her maiden name more heavily into her image, but then that just kind of went nowhere. It didn't end up happening, and so that kind of gave, like, people were like, what is going on? It was like watching a game of ping pong. They were like, okay, so they are together, but then I thought they weren't, but they are. But the thing is, right, that Ariel, this is kind of a moot point, like, Ariel had really only been publicly known by the name Ariel Fulmer, so as far as business moves go, keeping the last name Fulmer was a pretty smart one. Nobody would know who she was otherwise. But then also, a lot of divorced or separated people never do revert back to their maiden names for plenty of reasons. Some just want to have the same last name as their kids, so they don't want to change it. It's like their family name at that point. Some people can't be bothered. Some people just simply do not want to. Maybe they like it more, or they just associate with it now. So I don't know. Again, it kind of said nothing. We just knew nothing for certain. And yet, of course, people over the last couple of years, they had their assumptions, right? They assumed that Ned and Ariel's relationship had either burned down in flames or that it had continued without a hitch after Ned's affair. Those were kind of the two options for people. And all we could do was assume, so I don't think it's wrong that people were coming to conclusions like that they assumed something and sort of stuck with it. I think that's fair. But it doesn't necessarily make sense to me. I don't understand why the option was always like, oh, they're together or they're not. It's like, maybe they're co-parenting? I don't know. They had kids and they both seem like pretty dedicated parents. But some people, this is where I found issue with the assumption side of things, was the fact that there were people, right, that believed pretty strongly from the proof that we'd seen, that Ned and Ariel had stayed together, and they commented some, not all of them, just some of them, they commented some fairly harsh assumptions over the years. Like, I saw some people saying that Ned was probably still actively cheating, despite not even knowing whether they were in a relationship or not for sure. Like, he can't cheat if they're not together. So the assumption is they are still together and he's cheating. Pretty big assumption. But then, more concerningly to me, they also had things to say about Ariel's character, which like, I saw some comments, basically they said that like she was an insecure pushover for staying with Ned. I saw some people saying that she was setting a poor example for their children, and all of this they're saying like it's a fact, while mind you, not truly knowing anything about the dynamics of their relationship other than what we were shown in a few snapshots. Like, these few snippets that we weren't even meant to see, and people are like, I know exactly what's going on here. Oh, she's such a weakling. Because the thing is, right, like, nobody's life is meant to be picked apart in the way that we can pick apart random strangers' lives on the internet now. It's never gonna make any sense that way. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors, and you can't deduce that from a picture. I don't know, I just feel like we could have theorized until the cows came home. But there was literally no way that we could have known anything about the way their relationship progressed concretely without either Ned or Ariel coming forward to discuss what they've been up to for the past few years. That is the only way that we could ever define their relationship, is if they did it. And honestly, it had been years. Like, it was starting to look like we'd just never have the answers that we were searching for. Until, to our collective surprise, both of them came forward. So just a few days ago, a YouTube channel named Rock Bottom with Ned Fulmer jumped out of the woodwork, just popped up out of nowhere, had 60,000 subscribers, okay, and the first upload to this channel got very popular very quickly. It was a video entitled A Conversation with Ariel Fulmer. Gripping. Insert that, oh my god, okay, it's happening meme from The Office. I think that's how everyone felt. Now, the description of this video, it's kind of explaining, oh god, I'm not okay. Explaining the whole idea behind this podcast, Rock Bottom with Ned Fulmer. This is what it says. It says, everyone makes mistakes. Some of us really big ones. But what comes next? Rock Bottom is a show that explores people's lowest, most embarrassing and challenging moments, featuring raw, unfiltered conversations with comedians, creators, authors, and celebrities. We talk about how they not only survived it all, but transformed their lives. It goes on to say, hosted by Ned Fulmer, the ex-BuzzFeed Try Guys co-creator whose own Rock Bottom ranked number 6 of Time's most viral moments of 2022. The show blends curiosity and empathy to tell stories of experience, strength, and hope. So this was my first thought. This is going to be a lot of like kind of thought through conclusions, but then also a lot of like first impressions are going to be dotted throughout this outline of events. My first thought here after reading that was, what an interesting choice for Ned to lean into his relationship as his personal brand again, especially considering how poorly it went the first time. I am seeing that he's accepting the place he's in the public eye and sort of anticipating the reception that he's likely to receive from the public, but in a very like optimistic way. I don't know. I guess you have to have that optimism. It's kind of like a survival instinct for a human being, isn't it? You can't just write yourself off, be like, well, I'm a piece of shit and everyone knows it. Like, you've got to have some hope. But in all honesty, is this a bad business move for Ned Fulmer? Of course not. It's going to rake in some cash. It's going to catch a lot of eyes. But is it going to last? I don't know about that. Like, is it going to work out in Ned's favor in the long term? We'll have to wait and see, but I'm skeptical. But either way, I did watch this whole video, of course. I had to. My due diligence as an internet reporter. It's so late, but anyway, I'm going to lay out for you what exactly was said in this podcast, like what has gone on in the lives of Ned and Ariel Fulmer since we last caught up with them in 2022. And that, of course, will answer the pertinent question of, are Ned and Ariel still together or not? And this is in their own words this time, so we can be pretty confident with it's not even a guess, we can be pretty confident with our knowledge now. And this video, really, it shifted my expectations quickly. It didn't begin with your like typical podcasty, chatty, interviewing setting. Instead, it began with Ned Fulmer sitting in a very white-centric room wearing this glowing white t-shirt. It kind of reminded me of like a big flag of surrender. It really gave, hello, do you remember me? The little angel from the Try Guy. But anyway, Ned starts this video off on a great foot by immediately explaining the whole affair backstory thing, and he's kind of acting like a dog who's just been told off for going through the trash by its owner. Do you know what I mean? Like, I understand that you're upset, I don't really know why, but I'm really, really sorry. It's kind of, I don't know, I hope you understand where I'm coming from there. It's something about the vibe. I think I'm just reading the vibe, and it's giving guilty dog.
Hi, I'm Ned Fulmer. 3 years ago, I cheated on my wife with my producer. It became a massive public scandal that caused a lot of pain to a lot of people. I know that I represented myself as a kind of wife guy who talked about his relationship and put that out there for public consumption. And you, as a viewer, I know that I broke your trust. I betrayed my spouse, coworkers, friends, family, and I betrayed you.
But notably, people have pointed this out, that Ned mentions that he had an affair with his producer in this introduction, but he doesn't delve into the details of the fact that his producer was a much younger subordinate of his. I don't know if he's expecting us to infer those details or if he's avoiding saying them because they're uncomfortable. But regardless, this whole introduction, a tad awkward to watch. Like, it feels disingenuous to me. And I think that's partially because it's obviously scripted. It's kind of giving like, hello, I am so sorry for what I did. What did I do again? Oh, where's my cards? Like, I can't judge 100%. Only Ned can really know if he's speaking from his heart here or not. Just because something is scripted, it doesn't mean it didn't come from, like, vows are scripted at weddings. It doesn't mean it's like, you hate the person you're marrying. Just, you wrote something down so you say it right or you don't forget it or whatever, I understand. But to be honest, I don't really care. I don't care. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like I need to be apologized to for what he did to his wife and his kids. I don't think that I'm important in this equation. Like, I don't know. In my mind, this is not an imperative part of the video. I understand that Ned is trying to like sew up his reputation, but I didn't need to hear an apology, Ned. This just exists entirely because Ned is trying to repair his image. That's the way I see it. But basically, in this introduction, Ned explained that he wanted to make reparations. He wanted to return to the internet in good spirit, and he said that one step in his journey, I guess, of making amends would be to publicly recognize, quote, the pain of my partner, Ariel. Interesting way to put it. But to be fair, if Ned did just come back onto the scene like nothing had ever happened, I think like there would have been an all-out war. Everyone would have been like, what are you doing here, Ned Fulmer? So I think he had to broach the subject, but then if he tried to do it without Ariel's involvement, I can't imagine that going down well either, because everyone would have been like, we don't want to hear from you. So I do understand his approach here. Like, I understand the train of thought that he got on that arrived at this destination. I get it. Was it super smart? No, I don't think so. But if Ned really did want to return to the public eye, then yeah, sure, he probably did need to address this. And with Ariel, yes. But we'll talk about that more after we finish. We're going to like break down what they say in the podcast, and then we'll talk about the conversation that's happening around the existence of it and what they said exactly and how they were acting. But regardless of how I feel about the existence of this podcast, I was very happy when the setting changed and the actual conversation with Ariel Fulmer began. It was a breath of fresh air. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pretty much summarize each section of this for you, just with the parts that I feel like are pertinent to understanding what they discussed and where they've been and stuff like that. It's not going to be, nothing is meant to be like an entirely comprehensive summary. I'm not going to try cover every single detail because I'm just one person. I can't. There are tons of other videos out there as well if you're interested in hearing more other perspectives, what other people thought was important, stuff like that. But the episode, it begins with Ned and Ariel kind of discussing how awkward it feels to be back in a content creation setting together. They were both like, we really do not want to be here. Like, we both just want to walk out. And they said that they kind of enjoyed being private figures, but they felt like they couldn't move forward in life or progress with other ventures because everyone had sort of hit pause in 22 and they left Ned and Ariel both stuck there. They haven't let them progress, which is very limiting. It must feel very frustrating, right? Because human beings are so much more than just one moment in their lives. And so it's a shame that, you know, Ned and especially Ariel, they got trapped in this like 2022 cheating wife guy snow globe and they couldn't break the glass, and that's really frustrating because, like I said, especially with Ariel, she did nothing. Let the woman live. But she went on to say, Ariel, you know, she did nothing, but she said in the podcast that whenever she stepped foot outside her house, you know, if she went to the supermarket, went out to dinner with the kids, she was like haunted by the thought that all everybody saw when they looked at her, when she breezed past them on the street or whatever, was the scandal that she had been caught up in, because that was so attached to her image. And so she felt like a sideshow attraction rather than a normal human being at some points, which is it's so upsetting because of course she is just a person. She did nothing to wrap herself up in this. All she did was ask for privacy throughout this whole thing. But then if anyone, you know, so much as looked Ariel up on Instagram after meeting her, then her personal business was probably the first thing they'd find on there. That's such an uncomfortable thing. She said she got to the point where she was introducing herself to people like, hey, I'm Ariel, my life is a mess, but I'm not that bad, you might want to be my friend, you know? And I can't even imagine being in that position. Like, that just sucks. It sucks. But they did go on, both of them, Ned and Ariel, they did go on to acknowledge the fact that their relationship was just so public that all things considered, it does make sense that Ned's affair turned into such major news online and people wanted to know everything. It wasn't something they welcomed, but it was something they understood. And then as far as Ned and Ariel's relationship status, Ned put it as saying they are friends with children together, basically. Ariel's vibe was more so, I am friends with you because we have children's together. Children's? Oh gosh. It was kind of giving frenemies. They said like some days were really good, some days were really bad, some days were in between, but they clarified that yes, they might go on trips here and there with each other, or they'll be seen like out and about chatting with each other in the interest of their children, because they're co-parents. I don't know why everyone was making such a big deal of, oh my god, I've seen them together. But anyway, the answer to our questions, Ned and Ariel are not together, but they're also not living completely separate lives, which is no different from plenty of other co-parents in this world. The amount of eyes on them is the only difference. People care about what they're doing more than you'd care about Joe and Amy got divorced and have shared custody, you know what I mean? But Ned and Ariel, of course, summed up their relationship best, so I'll insert some clips of them covering this topic if I think there's anything important that they said, which there probably is.
There's a spectrum of being together, not together. Right. Like there's ways in which we're together, but it's like the way that everyone wants to know, like, are you guys still like an item? Are you guys still a couple? Like, no. We really haven't been at all this last 3 years.
No, we haven't. People ask me, like, do you forgive Ned for what he did? And I mean, the answer is no. Absolutely not. How can you forgive somebody for lying to you, for cheating on you? No. Fuck no. Sorry, I saw red for a minute. It's like, no, the answer is no. But forgiveness isn't the goal at this point. You know, we've been together for a long time. And you are the father of my 2 beautiful children. We know each other really well. We've worked through a lot of stuff. The fact that I can be around you and still like have a good time and like enjoy spending time with you and enjoy spending time with my kids, like, I think that's a win.
We've recalibrated our relationship more towards a platonic friendship, and then, you know, it's just been challenging. But like, I think we're getting to a point of sort of celebrating that and really like embracing it and accepting it for what it is, as we were like grieving the past.
And then from there, Ned went on to say that it's hard to hear that Ariel doesn't forgive him and that she's still angry about what he did. And Ariel was like, well, duh, I'm still angry.
It's hard to hear you saying like, fuck no, I don't forgive you. Like, of course I get it. I mean, you're still, as much progress as we've had, you're still very angry.
Yeah, of course I'm angry. You know, we're talking about like not having sat in this position for 3 years, you know. And like, yeah, of course I'm still angry. We lost a lot. There's a lot that happened 3 years ago.
She said that she was like totally blindsided by the entire thing, and it was almost worse, right? Because it was so public, where everyone was seeing what was happening. Everyone was invested in one way or another, and some fans even knew about Ned's affair before Ariel did. That's so... It would shake you to your core, wouldn't it? And like, even when Ariel did know, she could barely believe it at first. Like, I spoke about when she brought up in the car driving away from the airport, why is your sister in New York? And Ned's face just changed, and she could see this like shame and guilt just eating away at him, and he confessed, and she was just shocked, so shocked when Ned revealed what was happening behind her back, because you don't expect that, do you? Not from your wife guy husband. And so Ariel was like, take me away, right? I don't want to be here with you anymore. And I'm sure that just felt so entirely surreal, but it's not like she could escape the truth because it was everywhere. So Ariel, she had all of this information that the fans had posted online just at her fingertips, and so she sort of went through piecing everything together, and it clicked, and she realized she'd lost everything, and it was all just out there on the internet. Then from there, this is really sad, but Ariel said that she lost her trust in the world. She said there was nowhere that she felt safe, and there was no one that she felt safe with anymore, which is so upsetting. Like, she talked about the trauma. She said the trauma of everything that she knew not being real was just unbearable. And also add to that, having people with cameras like stalking outside of their house all the time. There was even this car, she told the story that there was a car that followed them from their house all the way to where they were taking couples therapy, and that clearly stuck out in her memory as this big event, because it was where those photos of Ned and Ariel originated from, the paparazzi ones of them walking down the street, where it's like, they're still wearing their wedding wings. Wedding wings. I can't do ours, can I? But going back to that page 6 article that I read that included these photos in it, they noted that Ned and Ariel were seemingly in good spirits, but you'll be shocked to hear that that's because they were both very uncomfortable being followed around, photographed by this random stranger during like the worst time of their life. And sometimes, I'm sure we've all been there, you're in an uncomfortable, inappropriate situation, you just smile. I don't know, it just like dispels a bit of your discomfort. It like sort of masks your fear almost. You become like agreeable and polite, and you're like, I'm not a threat to you, please don't hurt me, you know, grinning from ear to ear. But yeah, the way Ariel phrased it, it was like she was stuck in this bubble of controversy. And I just feel like, hearing that, it just made me feel so bad for her. I think she would have given anything for everyone to just turn away, just look the other way. Because even I think like comforting words or messages of support or whatever, they were probably so overwhelming and so stomach churning at the time. It would have been like, can you leave me alone to process this? She had no space. Like, it just sounds like Ariel wanted everyone to disappear, but that couldn't happen, of course, and so she had to disappear instead, and that's not fair. Nothing here, nothing that happened was fair to Ariel. And so Ariel, she expressed that generally she didn't know what to do or how to progress now that she had this knowledge of Ned having an affair. She was like, what would someone in a movie do? You know, how are you supposed to react? Because obviously she had no intention of ever being in a situation that she found herself in. I mean, she'd been with Ned since they were kids. She said they'd grown up together, and she distrusted her life partner completely with everything. And so that uncertainty that she felt is like so understandable, because how are you meant to react in that situation? There's no right way to react. What do? You have so many choices, so many options at your fingertips, and none of them feel like the right one. It's just terrible. But from there, Ned sort of took a turn speaking. He sort of touched on the delusions and the rationalizations that he as a cheater underwent to justify the affair that he had, which actually it was very hard to listen to, but it was an interesting perspective. I'll insert some clips for you just so you can see it from him and hear his affect and everything. I'll see if I can find something pertinent or relevant to put in.
But I didn't even let you say anything. I was like, turn this car around. You don't remember that?
No, I don't remember it happening like that, but it doesn't matter.
How do you remember it happening?
Oh, I mean, you asked me a couple of different follow-up questions as I just sort of answered them. And then, once I answered it in such a way that you knew exactly who it was and what had happened, then you were like, take me back to the airport. Yeah. That part was very cinematic, if you were trying to be like in a movie. I think there was a lot of sort of delusions and rationalizations that you as the person doing that sort of are telling yourself as to why it's not so bad, or why it's going to be okay, or why actually this talks about it this way. And then it's like, I remember that moment, it all just kind of like fell down, where I totally could see how devastated and just completely traumatized you were. And then it was just like, oh, everything changed for me as well. I'm like, oh no, this is like, I've been hurting this person that I love this whole time.
You didn't realize until then?
Well, but then there's other things you tell yourself to kind of sort of compartmentalize, I guess.
Interesting.
It's sort of it's like an addictive cycle, kind of feeling really guilty and ashamed, and then telling yourself the ways in which it's, kind of just lying to yourself, and then, And I did want to tell you, and there was probably a small part of me that was sort of relieved to not be keeping a secret, I guess.
But then what was really interesting to hear Ariel speak about was how she felt like the burden of not only coping and recovering, but also carrying the shame of the affair. It all sort of fell on her shoulders. And she mentioned how quickly and how easily Ned cheating became a question of her character for some people, where it was like, what did you do wrong then for him to like have to cheat on you? You must have been a bad wife, or etc., etc. And I'm sure she was saying that to herself internally, right? Because that's the sort of thing that you think about when something like that happens to you. And then to hear that externally as well from so many different directions, no matter how untrue that is, it must be soul crushing. Like, it would make you question. You're already questioning everything, and now it's just, even internally, am I bad?
It's something that I've heard a lot. There's this sense of relief when the partner who's doing the betraying is able to finally tell the betrayed partner that about all the things that they have been doing, and kind of put their shame onto the other partner. I was the victim of this situation, and yet when you told me, I had to like accept your guilt and your shame, and in our like society where couples are, especially married couples, when men have affairs, women are often looked at as like, well, what did you do wrong? And it's so hard to get out from under that, of like, well, what did you do to make him look elsewhere? Were you not a good enough wife? Were you not, did you not make him happy enough?
I don't think it's fair that as a society you're put in that position. It's certainly not true. And no, it's not something that I imagined as I was doing this. I think none of it was. If you really like let it sink in just how much you're hurting your partner and how devastating it is, like, how could you do that? And it's still very difficult now, even 3 years later, to see you in pain as you're talking about that. I guess there's nothing I can do to change the past or or to help.
But then thankfully, pushing past that, Ariel has said that she actually feels like she's in a really good place now, which is just incredible to hear, of course. But I mean, she's still affected by everything. Like, she pretty much straight after she said that, she cried.
I had so much life left. We still have so much life left. I don't know I'm crying.
I think it's like the loss of that dream that we both had. It felt like that in that time period for me too.
What happened?
Well, the dream started to break apart for me, and then rather than being able to talk about it or to confront those feelings, I wanted to. I guess I was too afraid to say how I was actually feeling, and it seemed, I don't know, I chose to deal with it and deal with like feelings I was experiencing in a way that was really self-destructive and hurtful to you. And it wasn't like anything you did or like we had a bad marriage. It was about me and choices that I made and just actions that I took that I'll always regret. I'll always regret how much pain I caused you and other people. You know, and I'm deeply, deeply sorry. And I'll spend my whole rest of my life trying to make amends to you and to, you know, show up differently, to lead a life of integrity and to be a father that our children can learn from.
Because the reality is that you just kind of carry situations like that around with you forever. It becomes a part of you, a piece in your puzzle. It's a burden and it's awful. But it's the curse of being human, I guess. But still, it is good to hear that Ariel has been able to sort of overcome a lot of those heavy feelings that she felt were sort of hoisted onto her back in 2022. Not that she should have ever had to deal with them in the first place, but it's just good that she's had the strength to make her way through that. And so then the next topic was what's next? What's next for Ned and Ariel? Ariel sort of said that as time passes and as more and more genuinely caring people enter her sphere, you know, become a piece of her life, things just keep looking up for her. So Ariel is finding now that the people around her either don't know or don't care about the scandal that she was involved in. Because the thing is, obviously, the whole scandal, it felt so blown up and so magnified online. But of course, the real world is quite different. Life goes on, right? Things just keep moving. And knowing that has given Ariel the courage to sort of unleash herself back into the world. And she can still feel like everything is okay. You know, she can go on dates, she can take her kids out, even with her ex-husband. She can just be herself without the sole focus being on the affair all the time. She really feels like she's able to move past it now.
I can live in a world where this has happened and people know and also we've moved on. You know?
Right.
Where people are like, oh my God, are they back together?
Right.
Just because I'm like having a joyful time with my kids and my ex-husband. You know? Like, is that a crime?
Yeah.
To feel joy? Like,
can I live?
You know?
Let them. Yeah.
Like a familial relationship.
Yeah. We've like redefined our relationship not as partners, romantic partners. Yeah. Sort of like, you know, family or platonic partners and pals. If you want to say pals.
And then throughout this, Ned was like trying to relate to Ariel's experience. He just kept throwing in like same. And he shared this anecdote. He said something like, yeah, you know, most people I meet in real life are like, you know, that's shitty, but we've all been through some hard times. I'll see if I can find the quote because I really paraphrased it there.
And they just seem to not care.
Yeah.
You know, like it just wasn't a big deal.
It is kind of funny. It's like the whole, you know, internet and people making TikToks seem to care so much. And then you meet anyone in real life and it's like everyone has some way to relate to some sort of a cheating story.
Just like all the parents at Wes's school or, you know, they're like, either they don't know or they don't give a flying fuck. They're like, yeah, who cares?
Mm.
You know, they're like, it's one of many scandals. Like, also it was 3 years ago. Like, get over yourself.
Yeah.
You know, like that's kind of how we feel. They're sort of like,
right, because when you're in the school environment, like there's a bunch of different types of families and parents, and some people are together, some people aren't, and I'm sure every marriage or relationship has a story as to how it breaks down.
Like, it just gives you so much perspective.
Yeah.
It gives you so much perspective to just be in a group of people where nobody cares.
Yeah, I feel the same way that it was kind of the social communities in school or wherever you are that you kind of just start to feel less alone.
Yeah.
Where, you know, somebody that's your friend or like another couple that you're friends with just can say like, you know, like it was shitty what you did, and also everyone goes through hard times and you move forward the best you can. And whether you are together or not, or sort of together friendly, but not romantically, like however you want to live your life as your family moving forward, that's like your business.
Honestly, I'm realizing now that I didn't really pay that much attention to what Ned had to say in the video. I don't think I found it important. I don't know. But anyway, I mentioned that, what Ned said, to say that I felt like it kind of missed the mark. I don't know if he realized it, but it was really awkward because I think the main thing for me was like Ariel didn't choose this situation. She didn't make a mistake. She didn't do anything. Ned chose this for the both of them. So I don't think that Ned's experience is comparable to Ariel's. I can see why he was trying to relate to her, but it didn't make sense. But Ariel, she went on to speak about the fact that she's learning that sort of separating her public-facing self from her private self is important, even as an influencer, and even when it feels like it's lying, it's important. And then next, Ned acknowledged that his rock bottom, I guess what he's based this whole new channel and podcast around, was the time that Ariel told him that it was unlikely that their relationship was going to survive his affair. When the poor guy had to suffer the consequences of his actions, he really started struggling. But now, of course, that's in the past. It's been years. So what does Ned want to do with himself? Why is he trying to claw his way back into the internet's good graces now? This is what he had to say about that. I'll cut to him talking about it.
People kind of want to like just see, it's like, oh, it's like you're a stereotype. You're kind of like that person. And I guess I noticed that in my own work. It's like the things that consistently drew people in were adorable family posts or talking about my wife, and then producers lean into that and like craft situations for me. And over time, it felt super pigeonholed and just like I had to fulfill this one like quadrant in a foursome to just be this like, you know, kind of caricature. Have a desire to create and to tell stories, but I don't really want it to be about myself as a character or myself or my relationship or my personal life. You know, I've always been drawn to things that make people curious and finding ways of connecting people with their interests. And so I came up with I see myself more as like a host and more as just a vehicle for other people's stories. And I don't know, maybe I can, because of what I've gone through and my past, like connect with people and empathize with people. What?
Yeah, no, you think you're interesting enough?
No, I don't.
You think other people?
I think other people would be interesting. And then that's regardless of what I think. I don't want to talk about my personal life or my family. Like I want to keep our children out of the spotlight. I keep our dating lives private. Like it's not a good idea for my mental health at least, but I think also in general, to sort of make your whole life your brand. I want to make stuff that helps people learn things, make stuff that helps people like empathize with others. And you know, the idea behind the podcast is to tell stories of other people's challenging times and how they overcame them.
And then finally, Ned and Ariel, they closed this podcast off by reiterating that they are living separately, they are single and ready to mingle while Ariel is, and they are still maintaining a shared focus on being ace co-parents for their 2 young children. They exist in the same space as each other for those kids. Ariel is doing much better. She's now a solo artist. She's regained her love for pottery. She said it was something that she was really into when she was in college. So she re-entered that hobby, and that became the catalyst for her starting her ceramics business when she realized she really enjoyed it. But as for being an influencer, Ariel has said she's not really interested in that. She likes to sort of create in solitude. She likes her privacy, and she doesn't want to have to hold herself to the internet's expected standards of beauty and graceful aging and perfection. She wants to stay away from all that. She's just happy to be authentic and messy and to just have this like quiet, uninterrupted confidence in and love for herself, including all the imperfect bits, which ironically I think makes her a fantastic influence, but it doesn't mean she should subject herself to the cruelty of the internet, does it? So good for her. I really respect that decision, even though I do think there's a lot that we could learn from Ariel Fulmer if she chose to step forward into the spotlight. And there's a lot that we could all learn about what not to do from Ned Fulmer, so I guess 2 sides of the same coin there, really, seriously. But finally, Ariel expressed that she'd like for Ned and for herself, for both of them, to be able to express themselves void of judgment. And then they sort of shared in the sentiment that they'd like to grow as individuals and to raise their children with love while instilling good values in them. And that's it. That sort of wraps up the first episode of Rock Bottom with Ned Fulmer. In the next episode, he said he'll be highlighting Lara Love Harden, who is a mother who overcame a heroin addiction and became a best-selling author. But now that we've explored that, I'm going to break down a bit of the public response that I've seen, along with some of my personal takeaways and my thoughts and my opinions. I'm going to start with the existence of this podcast in general, or this episode and this podcast, because I've seen probably the most conversation about this. There are a lot of comments online that are unhappy with the fact that, well, this episode, with the fact that it exists, but also the podcast in general, for a couple of glaring reasons. The first is that it feels like Ned has sort of exploited his wrongdoing for the sake of career progression, and he's dragged Ariel into it and also walked all over her. Actually, I've just explained the whole thing because it sort of feels that way, because instead of working his way up from the bottom, Ned chose to repurpose Ariel's old Baby Steps podcast YouTube channel for his usage. So you can see on Social Blade, the Rock Bottom with Ned Fulmer channel has upwards of 60,000 subscribers, but it's only gained 2,000 of those in the past month. And the reason that's happened is because he rebranded the Baby Steps channel with this Rock Bottom channel. So he had an existing subscriber base. And I did think it was very conflicting. Like, the response to this podcast episode was not positive. It was generally pretty begrudging. And then I watched the video and it had, like 350,000 views maybe when I saw it. And the channel already had 60,000 subscribers. I was like, that's an insane reception. That's an amazing turnout. But now that I know it's an old channel, it makes so much more sense. I was like, what? Like a quarter of people that watch this have subscribed? But everyone in the comments is like, we're only here for Ariel. I was so confused. It makes sense now. So the thing is, right, people are quite unimpressed that Ned sort of cheated his way to 60,000 subscribers. And he also has like all these glowing reviews on his podcast channel and stuff like that. It was never his channel in the first place, right? So people are like, ugh. Playing devil's advocate, it does sound like Ariel didn't intend on returning to the platform, so I guess it might make sense then to utilize like an old unused channel that already has all its privileges, because you have to put your phone number in to be able to add your own thumbnails and stuff like that. I think you can only open so many of those channels per phone number, maybe annually? I'm not entirely sure, I can't remember, but I guess that could have been the thought process around Ned taking over Ariel's old Baby Steps channel, like, oh, I don't need this, you can have it, it's already set up for you. But there's no denying that as far as rebuilding his image goes, it's not helping. Not a great choice. It wasn't a good idea, but I guess he didn't anticipate that. Then when it comes to the existence of the podcast episode itself, personally, I'm conflicted. The general consensus online seems to be that it was like peeking into a couples therapy session. It kind of felt like something we were not meant to be seeing, which I completely agree with. But I think the circumstances, like, I feel like this is a situation that the public should have never been heavily involved in. We shouldn't know like the deep, intricate details of what's going on in the lives of internet strangers and the lives of their children by extension. It's weird. But the extraneous circumstances here mean that we were heavily involved and we were emotionally invested from the very moment the news broke years ago. And with that considered, the balance was off from the jump. It was always going to be weird. Things were bound to feel awkward and a bit inappropriate, but deep down we all wanted to hear it too, like we'd been begging for this. I don't think that justifies the existence of something like this. I don't know. I think Ariel made her points very eloquently. I felt like Ned did give her a fair amount of space to do that, possibly because he didn't have much worth saying. But anyway, I still feel like we had no right to know any of this, but that's just me. So throughout the episode, I found myself thinking, was this really necessary? But then Ned and Ariel both touched on that. They both spoke about some reasons that they felt like it was. You know, Ariel wanted to get her side of the story out, especially is what I keep coming back to. But at the very least, it does feel slimy for Ned to be in the position to capitalize off of the trauma that he caused his wife and children. So even though Ariel was vocally on board with it, the episode did still feel exploitative to an extent. I don't know, like, I'm not going to say that it shouldn't have happened, because I don't think I'm in the position to tell two fully grown adults what to do. But from a viewer's perspective, I really think that Ariel could have come forward on her own to share her story and it still would have achieved the desired result. Ned didn't really have to be there. If anything, he just made it really, really awkward. But Ariel made it clear. She said she wanted to get this out there. She wanted to get it off her back. She wanted to move forward with her ceramics business in peace without this haunting her. But she didn't want to produce content. And since Ned does want to produce content, there is a possibility that they both truly considered that this would be ideal for each of them, for their own selfish reasons, if you will. Selfish being self-driven, self-motivated. Now, on that note, do I think that Ned would have come forward with something like this if he didn't perceive that he would benefit in some kind of way? No, I don't. The thing is, right, that this podcast episode, it probably would have been accepted with open arms if it was posted from Ariel's perspective on a channel of hers, but of course it wasn't. Ned chose to open up closing wounds for the internet to peer into because he wanted to be a public figure again. He used this situation to propel his career, without question. He used it as a jumping off point for a new business venture, 100% end of story. It's the truth. But I came across this Reddit thread. It was entitled Ariel Fulmer 99% went to that podcast to humiliate Ned, and no one can convince me otherwise. And as much as I agree that Ariel had no intention of letting Ned off easy in that podcast episode, I'm not sure that publicly humiliating the father of their children was Ariel's primary motivation. I think that there's a possibility can only theorize, but could Ned have broached this idea and then Ariel figured, well, he's going to talk about it anyway, I might as well be there to keep the narrative straight? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if she would have been like, I can't wait to make this man look like a fool online, or more so it would have been like, I can't wait to protect my image, right? Because, I've seen some comments saying that, Ariel is just as bad as Ned because she chose to appear on his podcast. They're just, like, I don't know, hold on, I'll read you some. There was this Redditor I saw wrote, then why are you on his podcast, girl? And there was another one that was like, she should have told the story on Kylie Kelsey's podcast. I don't know who that is, but they said she could have kept the media value for herself. But like, why are we questioning her decisions? Why are we telling her that she should do something? Is there really a should in a situation like this? I think that's personal preference. Like, you can definitely say, I wouldn't do this, or I don't understand that. That's different. Like, it's natural for us to judge other human beings and for us to put ourselves in their shoes and stuff like that. But the way some people are phrasing it doesn't sit right with me personally. I think it's continuing that cycle of putting blame on Ariel for doing nothing. But I think what mostly is like so off-putting to me is the fact that we shouldn't even be able to comment on this. The sad reality is that Ariel has been forced into the position where people care way too much about what she does in her own personal life. And if you listen to the podcast, she's over it. She doesn't want to be in that position. And yet she still felt like she had to speak out for the sake of clarity of her own image. I mean, for years, I kind of mentioned this before, but her character was being criticized and attacked over positions that people had no solid evidence to confirm that she even chose, that she was even taking. And that's not even mentioning the fact that relationships and circumstances, they're nuanced. They're not cut and dry. You can't define a relationship for somebody else. You can't say you should do this and you shouldn't do that. It doesn't work that way. Every situation is different. Everyone is different. I don't know. I just hope that with like the new information that we've been presented with now, I hope that the people who took vague information and jumped to conclusions and matter-of-factly insulted Ariel are able to sort of reflect on their behaviors, because I don't know, it's one thing to share an opinion or a non-invasive theory or a personal anecdote. It's another thing entirely to tear down a person who has asked for privacy over things that you've seen because you looked over their walls with binoculars. Like, nobody asked you to see this, nobody asked you for your comment, and yet here you are saying, oh, she's weak, she's a doormat. How do you know? Unfortunately, all that did was put Ariel into an even more compromising position. Do you know what I mean? Because for me, as far as comments on Ariel's character goes, she was put into a really unfair situation. It would have been reasonable, if not expectable, for her to crumble. And yet she handled everything in such a commendable way. Like, from what I've heard, she really has an immense amount of courage and self-worth, and she's prioritized herself and her children in a healthy way, in a way that doesn't relieve the person that hurt her from any of their wrongdoings. I think it's really unfair to say that she's weak or that she set a poor example for her kids without knowing that really what she was doing was she was teaching her kids that family is important, but so is having respect for yourself, right? She set the example that you shouldn't allow anybody to treat you poorly without repercussions. I think it's really admirable how she handled everything, and I think it's such a shame that people have said things about her without having a full scope on the situation, which I'm doing right now, to be fair. But I don't know, in the end, I think it's just crazy that she had to do anything like that in the first place, especially with the public involved. So I don't know. The thing is, right, the public perception of Ariel is generally positive with a couple of stains and smears. So that's what I was trying to highlight. But I think it goes without saying that people are not super keen on Ned Fulmer as a whole. Like, the comments that I've seen have made it clear that they do not support him. They don't appreciate the way that he minimizes the fact that he tore his family apart by cheating on his wife with a subordinate, and they don't think that he has any business crawling back to the internet for forgiveness. Yeah, he wants this other chance in the spotlight, but he had everything he wanted, and he planted a bomb, and he detonated the bomb, and now he's like, I'm so sorry. Can we redo that? The general consensus that I've seen is that Ned is uninteresting, that he's taking a desire path to fame instead of trekking the harder route, and people are incredulous, to be honest, that Ned thinks that like a half-baked apology to Ariel and to the public will be enough for him to like come back unscathed. Now I'm gonna share some of my personal takeaways from watching this podcast episode, but I'm gonna try to keep it sort of balanced, if you will. Like, I want to understand what's happening here. It's really easy to be like, Ned sucks, but let me actually sort of analyze a little bit of what happened in this episode. What I'll say first of all is that I do feel like Ned sort of beat around the bush a lot in this video. He wasn't half as vulnerable as Ariel was, and he sort of dodged. He never fully addressed the gravity of what he did. I guess it's quite hard to do that. But that read to people as he was like struggling to unlock meaningful insight into what he did and why he did it. And people also felt like he didn't really make an effort to explain or to showcase how he'd changed for the better since 2022. Like, he did this interview with People before his podcast episode dropped, and he said, I feel ready to share my story and to move on into a new chapter, but he didn't really demonstrate that in the podcast himself, unfortunately. Now, he did say, though, he said, it's one thing to talk about it in a therapy setting. It's a really hard thing to have that conversation in such a way where you know people are watching it. And devil's advocate, because I'm just considering these things, Ned did seem a bit awkward, a bit emotionally detached. That could be because he's uncomfortable acknowledging the damage that he's caused, which I think is fair to say that that probably plays a part in it. But I also wonder if he could have been feeling sort of like put off or nervous, just knowing that hundreds of thousands of people would be judging literally his every breath in that video. And also, you've got to remember, I guess, that the sentiment of like, men don't cry, that's been drilled into a lot of boys since childhood. So it's not unusual to see a man with his guard up in emotional situations, and it can read as like douchebaggery, like, oh my goodness, why don't you care? But it's sort of just method acting, like it's just been drilled into them. But in the end, even with that considered, I think it is clear that what Ned chose to contribute to that conversation with Ariel was incredibly calculated, because he made it quite clear he was there to like rehabilitate his image in the public eye, and Ariel didn't go easy on him. So he had to be really cautious about what he like tacked on to the end of her statements, if that makes sense, because he could come off so poorly so easily. There was almost no way that it could have gone well for Ned Fulmer, to be honest, although this is just reading into a situation that I don't know anything about. But I do want to add that his reluctance, if that is true, to accept that he's done something really, really bad is understandable. It is really hard to acknowledge fully that you've done something bad, because generally if you think of yourself as being a good person, which most of us do, that really shatters your reality. So we make excuses for ourselves. We use gentle language when we talk about what we've done, and we sort of subtly avoid acceptance, almost subconsciously, because it just feels better. And obviously we don't seek discomfort, typically. Human beings don't. It's just so easy to say that other person is an idiot and they need to change. So easy. It's a lot harder to say, I'm an idiot and I need to change, and really mean it and really stick with it and really recognize that. But that's not an excuse. Sometimes we do need to do hard things, and I just feel like maybe the fact that Ned doesn't seem to be at that point yet is a sign that he wasn't entirely ready to step back into the public eye. But still, with that said, and as low as I'm setting the bar, because I know it's low, I do think it's fair to recognize that Ned did take a level of responsibility for his actions in this video. He wasn't defensive, he didn't seem like he was in denial or that he was dishing out excuses left, right, and center. Not from my perspective, that's not what I saw. Some people did consider that this could have been like a manipulation tactic. I didn't think about that, so I thought I'd take a very brief look into it to see if I could like corroborate the theory at all. And I really did only take a very quick look into it. So I perused on over to Wikipedia, and I found that a psychology author named George K. Simon had some pertinent things to say about this. The paragraph reads, Simon states that manipulative individuals may use a variety of deceptive techniques to exert control or avoid accountability. One such method is lying by commission, where someone deliberately makes a false statement or provides misleading information with the intent to deceive. This involves actively stating something untrue rather than simply omitting the truth. Manipulative tactics also include lying by omission, pretending to be in denial, where the manipulator refuses to admit any wrongdoing, rationalization, in which the manipulator justifies inappropriate behavior with seemingly logical excuses, selective inattention/selective attention, and diversion, which is a tactic in which the manipulator avoids giving a direct answer and instead steers the conversation towards a different topic. And like I said, I didn't necessarily consider this while I was watching. I didn't notice this myself, so I'd be interested to hear if you feel like there are some parallels between that paragraph I just read and Ned's behavior on the podcast, or if there's anything else you notice. Because you probably caught plenty of things that I didn't, but just from memory, the argument could be made that Ned omitted a good chunk of details. Generally, to me, it just seemed like Ned didn't have much to say at all, which is where I feel like maybe the omission thing, like the more silent he was, the more of a good person he seemed like. Do you know what I mean? The better of a light it painted at him. But I did just want to quickly as well open up some dialogue about the input that Ned did have in this video, even though it wasn't much, because he did offer us some insight into the mind of a cheater. And I found that interesting because cheating is obviously it's seen as a shameful thing to do. So it's not often that somebody is really upfront about what was happening in their minds when they were having an affair, they're more likely to dodge the subject than actually answer any questions or explain what they were feeling truthfully. But Ned did that. He spoke specifically about delusions and rationalizations, and I found that interesting because, like, there is no good reason to cheat, obviously. Well, in my honest opinion, there's no good reason to cheat. But it is something that human beings do, right? And there is always an explanation for a behavior, or at least there usually is. There's normally something that drives it, right? Which, again, it doesn't qualify as an excuse, to be clear. Like, I'm not trying to excuse his behavior. I just want to understand it, I guess. I feel like if you don't understand the cause, then you'll struggle to treat the symptom. So just to take a very brief detour, because I do find it really interesting to, like, align actions and behaviors with psychology. Even on a relatively surface level, I do feel like it's something we could benefit from knowing, just, you know, being able to recognize it and understand it a little in our everyday lives, I guess. So I found this article, it was on simplypsychology.com, and it lists common reasons for cheating, or reasons in quotations, you know what I mean, but they list the following. They listed desire, attention, like feeling special, when something is missing in the relationship, reclaiming a lost identity, like reliving your youth, fear of facing the truth that the relationship is failing, Ned mentioned that, sexual dissatisfaction, the forbidden fruit effect, which is impulse control problems, self-sabotage, immaturity and selfishness, personal crisis, and being a narcissistic game player. I definitely recognize a couple of the things that Ned mentioned in that list, so very interesting. And then secondly, I found an article on Forbes. They listed the common, quote, justifications as being defeasibility, meaning it was a mistake made void by new information or by circumstances, for example. Well, I was drunk, you know. Biological explanations, like, oh, they look so good, I just had to have them, it's in our nature. Scapegoating, like, I was never a cheater until my partner did that. Denial of injury, meaning like holding the belief that their actions aren't really hurting anyone, which sounds like the fallacy that Ned was leaning into. Again, interesting. Denial of victim, meaning like, oh, my partner deserves to be cheated on, it's fine. And deserving self-fulfillment. So, you know, oh, well, while I'm young, I should just go out and have a good time at any cost. I deserve it. So yeah, as much as nothing that I said sounds particularly glowing or forgivable, because it's not, it does provide some enlightening insight. I think, like, it just provides a bit of perspective to know what makes us tick, what happens in our little noggins that make us do the things we do. But still, as far as things go with Ned, back to Ned, I don't really have any sympathy for him. I tend to be a very forgiving person, but there's just something about the situation, like, he, as a 30-something-year-old man with children and a wife, with a public-facing career that hinged on him being a good guy, made a conscious and extended choice to carry out a relationship and sleep with his engaged subordinate. You can't tell me that anything went through his mind other than, this is a bad idea. Like, you have to, I don't know. I'm judging, I've never been in that situation, but in my mind, it's gross. But then I think about it a little deeper, right? And I'm like, Ned did a very hurtful and very destructive thing. He should face the consequences of his actions 100%. He needs to take a long, hard look at himself. He needs to work to erase the parts of him that allowed him to make the choice that he made. Because obviously if he doesn't, his life and the lives of the people around him will continue to suffer. But then again, when I think deeper, I'm like, when do the consequences of being a cheater end? Because the social stigma of being a cheater can last for a really long time. And so then should a cheater be regarded as like an irredeemable person? I don't know. I think that's a question without an answer, because it's everyone's individual choice as to whether a cheater is, you know, whether they've made a severe enough error in their ways that they'd write someone off for the action of cheating. For me, I don't know if I'd write someone off 100% of the time, but it would definitely always play on my mind if I knew someone had cheated before. I think that being able to do that says something about you, but then I also don't think that being a cheater has to define someone's life forever, because life goes on and things change and people change, you know, they learn, they grow. Although being a cheater that is resistant to change, you know, unwilling to work on yourself, refusing to acknowledge the damage you've caused, that would have that long-lasting effect, right? You'd always be viewed in a negative light because you haven't grown. As for Ned, something about him still feels icky to me. I just feel like he still has a long way to go, but that's okay. Life is a journey. And I don't even know him. Like, I don't know if my observation is the correct observation. I'd love to hear your opinion. But the public response I saw does indicate that people don't believe that Ned has changed much since 2022. He just really broke the trust of his viewers. And the way he's approached them since then has done nothing to mend that. He's tried, it just hasn't worked. I think the thing is, like, he's saying one thing and people are looking at him and being like, no, it's not aligning. Like, if Ned really wants to just create and he wants to focus on other people, then he hasn't really communicated that properly by jumping straight into the public eye with this pre-existing YouTube channel, playing into this inflammatory topic that heavily involves him. I don't know. I guess the fact that his name and his face are front and center is putting a lot of people off. It's a tricky situation. I don't know how I'd navigate it. I'm not sure. I wouldn't do it well, I don't think, but I don't know if there is a good way to go about it, really. The thing is as well, a lot of viewers just don't want to see Ned back. But Ned has free will. Like, he can return to the internet if he wants to, obviously. It's just that the way I'm reading the response from internet users is that, like, he's returning to a pretty apathetic crowd. They're not really interested. But regardless, human to human, I hope that Ned can reinvent himself. I hope that he can put some good out into the world, which he seemingly is motivated to do. And I do hope that's an authentic step forward for him. I wish him the best, you know. It's just the fact that he's still leaning on being a familiar face, the fact that he worked with the Try Guys, the fact that he was Ariel's wife, that doesn't scream I've changed and I've moved on. Not to me. It screams I haven't let go. Those are my thoughts on Ned Fulmer as for right now, I think. Now, I'm going to touch on Ariel briefly because I've spoken for way too long. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. But Ariel, I think she's a really tough cookie. Seriously, such a strong lady. She ran headfirst into really hard conversations. She didn't even think about going easy on Ned, and she was obviously at the end of her rope with him. She was like holding it together, but she was frustrated and you could feel it through the screen. She was just flabbergasted by some of the things he said, and she honestly seemed disgusted by him. Like, she'd gotten the ick hard, which is so totally valid. Her trust had been brutally shattered by someone that she gave her heart to for years. And that's just an irreparable hurt. You can't really come back from that. That stays with you forever. You know, you can't help but look at this person that did that to you and feel sick to your stomach, knowing what they're capable of. And yet it was clear to me that Ariel really held the power in this conversation. She didn't ask for the power. She demanded the power. Like, Ned submitted to her by force. It was kind of, again, like a dog being told off by its owner. He really gives me guilty dog energy. I don't know why, but I guess in the end, it's like, they both know that Ariel has nothing to apologize for. She has nothing to hide. Ned is the entire opposite. He's in the wrong. He has to be really careful with how he presents himself. She can just lay into him. And so Ariel knew that, right? She had this really engaged posture. She asked some hard-hitting questions. She shared some harder-hitting statements. She certainly wasn't complicit in Ned's game. I don't see that. I think that she was playing her own game. I think that Ariel arrived to the set that day with the intention of sharing her story, and she left with that achieved. She drove the conversation, pretty much answered all of the questions. She made it very clear that her relationship with Ned existed for the sake of their children, full stop, end of story. It wasn't complicated, that was it. They were co-parents. Ariel highlighted the damage that cheating causes in bright screaming yellow, and I think that's important, that she didn't sugarcoat it. She let it be what it was. I feel like the value in this podcast episode really laid in what Ariel said, and I'd love to get into it, but we don't have time. I have so much that I want to say. I literally have like 15 minutes of script, but I don't have time. I will say that it definitely made me think deeper than the subject of the podcast. It made me reflect on the way that I and the others around me consume and interact with media and public figures, and I think that was really important. Like, I mean, if you want to hear me talk about this, let me know. I'd happily talk about what Ariel Fulmer had to say in the podcast that I feel like because she's so much more than just her relationship. She said some really interesting things on the topic of privacy and being a public figure, being an influencer. I found that really interesting, so I'd love to talk about it, but I have spoken about this for way longer than I anticipated that I was going to, so these are my final thoughts. Let's wrap this up. Let's get it done. First of all, I really do hope that Ariel feels like she's broken out of the chains that Ned and the internet put her in. I hope that she feels like she's just free to be herself now, to live her life as she pleases, because she should have always been able to do that. And so once this sort of like media uproar dies down, it was bound to happen, and I'm sure she knew that, but I hope that now the internet will allow her to leave this scandal in the dust and to live the private life that she craves. It's literally all she's asked for this whole time, and she deserves that much. My primary takeaway from this podcast episode was that Ariel is a strong woman. My second was that life just isn't perfect. You know, neither are relationships, and Ned and Ariel's relationship, as it stands, happens to be complex, right? And that's something that's definitely easy to judge, especially from the outside looking in. And of course, we're all entitled to feel however we do about everything that's gone down. That's fine. But in the end, just sitting back and looking at the situation from kind of detached perspective, these people are just people. And life goes on. Every single day, Ned and Ariel get up and they add another chapter to their stories. And meanwhile, we're reading the same chapter over and over again. So I think that what's really important right now is to acknowledge two things that we've learned from Ned and Ariel's podcast episode. The first is that they together have stepped up to cultivate a family-first environment that works for them and, importantly, for their children. They've made the best out of a really shitty situation. The second is that they need us to allow them to leave Ned's affair in the past so that they can patch up their wounds and move forward in their lives. And as much as we want to uplift Ariel and we want Ned to feel like the wrath of the internet for hurting her, that's not what Ariel wants. Vocally, she wanted peace for her family. She wanted to have the ability to live her life without the internet trying to define her relationship and her character. Ariel just wants to make ceramics and live her best life, you know what I mean? She doesn't want anyone to care about what she's doing or who she's dating or whatever, unless she invites them into that, which she doesn't sound like she plans on doing. And that is so fear. And like, I do understand Ned did something bad. I don't think we should just let up on Ned Fulmer. I don't think we have to like bow down and support him on his next business venture if we don't want to. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, we can ignore him. That is probably the worst punishment that we could give him, and it's also the punishment that benefits Ariel and their children the most. I think we can really take a page out of Ariel's book. Like, she hasn't forgiven Ned. That's really clear. She hasn't forgotten what he's done. She hasn't allowed him to sugarcoat his destructive actions, but she did demonstrate that she's giving him space to be better. The camera died, but I'm literally about to finish talking, sorry. And in the end, really, regardless of what's happened, I do just hope wholeheartedly that Ned and Ariel can both heal from and like move past this whole situation, right? Not only for their own sakes, but for the sake of their children as well, because they don't deserve to be wrapped up in all of this, and they will be if it continues. So that, I guess, is all I've got to say about Ned and Ariel Fulmer. But what do you think about the whole situation? There's a very, like, everyone seems to have a similar opinion that I've seen, but there are some varying thoughts and feelings, so do let me know what you think. Hopefully this video wasn't too mind-numbing for you. We're moving literally in 2-3 days from now is when we start, depending on when we get the keys. So we are ready to go, but I feel like I really kind of had to rush this out. I've got to edit this, get it right uploaded so that I don't have to worry about it. But I'm sure the process will be smooth, and I'm sure I'll see you again next week, right? But yeah, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate you taking some time to sort of chat with me. I'll be back next week, hopefully with quite a fun episode. I'm thinking maybe the Tom Holland frog cheeks meme, if you know what I'm talking about. If you know, you know. But yeah, I need to, girl, my head is swamped. I can't even tell you. I just need to get a move on with everything. But yeah, I hope life is treating you well. If not, it will change. Hang in there. And I hope you have a lovely, lovely day. Thank you so much for being here. I might see you in the next one. I might not. But either way, bye.